Hello and welcome back to Woodhill Park. Hello again. You join me at my depot deciding what bits and pieces I want to add to it. I've finished off the concrete. Well, I can always change it with a wash. The wash is sort of a light sort of stony wash that I've rubbed away just to sort of give it sort of a light and sort of dark patches, and you can see all the imperfections in it. And I've darkened the area that goes into the sheds where there'll be oil spills and diesel spills as the locos go up and down. I've been trying to work out what I can do with this area here, because I've got an upright that goes up to the roof to hold the roof up, but I wanted to disguise it at a certain level. I mean, I can't disguise it beyond this, and as for painting it, I don't think that really works really. Might as well just leave it as it is. So I decided to have some sort of facade here, which is a brick wall that might be part of a building, who knows, but it's just like a sort of building at the side of the depot. And all it is just foam board with brick plaster card on top that's already weathered, that I'd done a while back, and just some stone edging, which is just painted cardboard really. And that hopefully will give me some sort of backdrop for this sort of fuel depot I want to put here. But I don't want the fuel depot to just sort of dominate the yard, so I've been looking for something small. And in my bits and pieces, quite a long time ago, I bought a sort of an fuel depot that I thought was possibly the wrong scale. It might be HO, but in this case it seems to look quite good. And I've painted some walling that did go around it, but I now want to paint it a different colour and weather it, and I propose to have this like that. And I've got a small fuel tank. I'm going to ship something like that, and a large fuel tank that I'm going to have over here. So it's just a backdrop here and not taking too much space, so there's a lot of open area. I've got piping to go on them, which I'm debating whether to paint a different colour just to make the piping stand out. But I've got a lot of weathering to do with these tanks, so I'm thinking of weathering powders rather than paints, but it might be a combination of both, as it needs rust streaks down them. As you look at a lot of fuel tanks, they're always going rusty from the seams, so I'll be adding some rust stains down the side of them. For the moment, the prefabs I'll just relegate it over here. At the moment, I'm not sure whether they'll stay, but I'm just leaving them here and create a bit of a junkyard. Disused bits, or bits that need to be repaired, or just they've been discarded because they're worn out. So I've got some of these brutes that I'm probably going to make them look all rusty and sort of barely usable, and other stuff that's sort of been dumped around the area from this angle you can see the facade I was on about, which will be behind the fuel depot. It's just made of foam board and just stuck together very roughly, and just a case of covering it to make it look somewhat real. But I'm not too worried about this area because this is off scene really, but I will clad it and finish it off. And it's got a sunken roof, so I shall add something on the top of that, but hopefully that will sort of frame the scene at the front of the depot. As the yard is starting to become finished, the builders have gone elsewhere, and now the number of people in the yard has decreased. As I had a comment saying there's far too many people in the yard. Normally you can't even see a person walking around. They're usually sparsely populated. Well, the reason it was populated, I was just portraying it being built, so the builders are in, but the builders have left now, so it's been scaled down just to a few guys that are wandering around the yard. I thought I'd walk over and have a chat with the guys just to ask how the building work is progressing. As I spoke about in my last update, that I went to Model U and got a model of myself, which I've painted and put a flash on my back so I can be a worker, or if you turn me around I can be just Joe Public really, and put on the station. I have got another figure which I'll paint because I'm not entirely happy with the finish on my first attempt, but it does allow me to mingle in the scenery and talk to the guys in the depot, as I said. Right, I thought I'd have a go at weathering these now. I've already weathered the small fuel tank, and I've just been using weathering powders, and a bit of a learning curve really, but just remember all streaks run downwards as drips of moisture always go with gravity and fall down the tank, so streaks always go downwards, which is obvious but not sometimes, if you know what I mean. So I've been using my Tamiya weathering powders, which I really like, and I've been using the brighter rust that I don't normally use, and a combination of ordinary dark rust as well and a bit of grub. And that's really my first attempt. I think I probably could improve upon it, and that's really the beauty of playing about with weathering powders. They're quite easy to sort of remove, and even sort of you moisten your finger and drag it down, you can sort of change the pattern of the weathering. Anyway, I'm going to have a go on the larger one now, just to show you what I did on the little one. Literally get some bright orange rust, in this case what's it called, orange rust, and then with a cotton wool bud just place it at the top of the rim and then pull down like that, and keep doing it, but try and keep vertical. I mean, you can wipe it away and dress it later, so you don't want it sort of how do I say, you want it random, you don't want them too regimental, so just pick random marks to pull away from the top, and also from round where the seams are. Just keep working with the odd streak here and there. Sometimes sort of a brighter streak, sometimes a more subtle streak. We can blend it all in later. They look pretty good if they're a real bright orange at some points and then running away to a faded orange. But a combination of faint and bright rust marks works. Just keep in mind as you're doing it where logically you would get rust. You know, around the pipe there's always rust around joints where metals meet. So a bit of rust around that point, trying to keep it vertical still if you can. And round objects, the rust streaks run from the top and round, obviously. Just keep going until you feel you've got enough there, and then you can blend it with your finger as well. Spread it out. You don't want to make it look that it's so old and rusty that it would be a liability and probably wouldn't be safe to hold fuel. You just want a sort of a light impression of sort of corrosion, and then alternate to a darker rust, which I'm running out of. And a bit of darker rust here and there. More of an overall effect with the darker rust though, as the rust has been there a long while and is well established rather than new streaks of bright rust. So you can wet your finger and sort of shift the weathering, get it to give it an overall sort of grotty look. Just imagine rain running down the side of the tank and what it would do. starting to come along. It's just something you can keep playing with really, and just keep going. And I'll go to a certain level that I'm happy with at the moment, but I can always pick it up at a later date and add more. You can always spray it with a sort of a satin clear varnish or matte clear varnish after you finish to set everything in place. A lot of the time I don't bother, so I can go back and revisit it, because if you spray varnish on it, you can't, well, it's not so easy to add to again. Going for streaks on the top now, coming away from the top of the tank. And blending them in the top of the tank itself, just a rough blending of new rust and some of the fittings, and then the fencing as well. The fencing is usually red rusty, and probably the worst part of the tank would be the fencing, unless it's been repainted, which is unlikely. There's probably more rust on the fencing than there is on anything else. This is just a brush to blend the weathering powders after you've finished really, and just get off any excess. I wouldn't say that's finished. In fact, I'll put a bit of, very tiny bit of soot on it, I think, as we're in a diesel depot. Will be a bit of grime on it here and there, but not too much. Well, subtleness is better rather than caking it in weathering powder. So, a bit of a subtle grime. Maybe indicating a spillage at one point. Who knows? I'm going to leave that for now. Reasonably happy with it. I can always play with it, like I've said. But it doesn't look brand new now. Looks like it's been sitting there for a while. Got some pipes to add back in, which I've just sprayed, and I'm now going to play with the brick plinth around here. And obviously the area that contains the tanks won't be very clean either, so I'll mess this up a little bit, a bit more grotty, sort of fuel stains and stuff inside the actual perimeter. but I'll do the wall first, and then I think I'll glue the wall in place. Probably not completely permanently, but use some copy decks, and then I'll sort of grottify the area. How's that for a new word? And make it look like there's all sorts have been spilt, and just adds to the overall look, really, I suppose, if you do that. I'm getting close to finishing what is a little diorama, really, of these fuel tanks. I've just taken the wall away to paint and weather, but the tanks themselves in the area is not finished, but on the way to being finished. And another stage further, brick walls painted, just got to weather it, and just running some very watered down paint over the top of it and wiping it off. Now, what's that called? I've forgotten at the moment. And on another stage further, I've just weathered the brickwork, sort of retaining wall around the fuel tanks, and added some foliage and sort of just some scenery, really, just something just to make it look a bit more weathered and overgrown, as there's now weeds around the walls. Just for today, a member of the public has got special permission to photograph the yard, and he's taking good use of it, and he's photographing the Class 20 and the Class 08 as they come out of the engine shed. I've now had the yard lights that I bought on that auction site turn up, and they're not bad for the money. They are pretty cheap. I think it was £7 for 5 of these, including postage. I mean, they're cheap and from China, and maybe with a bit of weathering and whatever they'll look okay, but I've got a bit of a dilemma where to put it. Trying to think of a place that'll look right, but also somewhere that I'm not going to keep knocking it. And as quite a bit of my layout, I haven't finished the point motors. Because it's not a travelling layout, I'm not rushed to do point motors, as I'm not sure where I want to have all the switches and whatever, or whether I want to go DCC with them or what. So I'm quite happy to just flick them manually at the moment, and it's no real hassle because, as I say, it's not a travelling layout. It just sits here, doesn't move, and basically most of the time it's just me, so it gives me something to do anyway, just getting up, moving about, rather than just sitting here vegetating. But because of that, I do have to reach over the layout every so often, so that's the downside. So when I do electrify the points, I'll have less contact with the layout, I suppose. But it means that I reach over for these points at the moment. They don't get moved very often because they're on the main line, and I think this point here gets flicked probably more than any other point in this area, just for the siding, you know, that leads up to the roll mail depot and the engine shed here. But because I have to reach over there, my sort of close-up eyesight's not brilliant these days, thanks to my job wearing my eyes out. So I sometimes get a bit confused between my glasses and looking over them, which I do sometimes, and I quite easily cock up and knock things flying. So if I was to put this light, say there, which might look quite right for what it's doing, it'll be slap bang in the middle of my travel to the points, or even to the layout should I need to get to a loco or a carriage, and I'm bound to smack it one, and because they're quite delicate it'll break it. So I'm loath to put it in like the sort of, I suppose, my travel from front to back of the layout, reaching over doing different things. So I've been thinking maybe it won't be quite as realistic, but I'll find a sort of tucked out the way place, or somewhere where there's already some height that stops me making a mistake and smacking it one. So maybe something like that. I did even think over here, but I don't think that would look right, sitting right next to the fuel tanks. But it's going to take a bit of thought, really. I was thinking one maybe here, and I'm also thinking of, because they're cheap, is breaking these up very carefully and just stealing the LEDs out of them and drilling and fitting them on the actual loco shed, where you've got these plastic sort of false sort of floodlights that do nothing, actually somehow fit them on there. I probably won't have any more than one or two sort of lampposts, but as I say, I want to keep them out of the way. I'm bound to snap at them otherwise, yeah, break them up by reaching over. So a bit of a dilemma, got to work that one out. I've now finished pretty much weathering the fuel tanks over here, and if I zoom in quite quickly, I've just put some vegetation around the wall that's now weathered, and I'm just making it look like it's been here for some time. Got more work to do to it. As I often say, there's plenty more things you can keep adding. So, but it's getting there. I just fitted the yard light, and I think it's probably the most convenient position for me not to knock it over, and it should shine across the yard, so you can't see it very well with a camera because it's so bright. But it's a bluey white bright floodlight, so pretty good for the money. I've installed the flashing light in the background as well for somebody welding in the shop. I've now also given my O2 a basic weathering, and I'll elaborate on this later on, I think, if I want to get a little bit more arty with it, but it now looks a bit more realistic than it did. I did have an annoying problem the driving rods on the wheels were banging into the side of the platform, only in a couple of places, but I don't have any issues with any other rolling stock, and this was quite annoying because I literally had to do something about it purely for this one loco. But I found the answer was a quick trip up and down the platform in the places where it's affected, with my little rabbit plane, because it sits nicely on the rails and you can just slide it up and down, just taking a very small amount off, and that was all what was needed. But yeah, it was annoying because I had to tailor it, but modelling's full of problems that you have to overcome. That's it for this update. I just made a little bit of a running session of this area that you may want to watch if you stay with the end of the update. If not, no worries, but thanks very much for watching anyway, and I do appreciate all the comments. I do read and reply to virtually all of them, and thanks for following the channel. So bye for now, see you again next time.